welcome back to the Girly Girl Bookworm. So today I have my June wrap up. I know I've been slightly missing. June was absolutely chaotic for me. It was the end of the school year. I was just exhausted. And as much as I read a lot of books, I wasn't loving anything that I was reading. So I just felt like I wasn't motivated to film because I wasn't excited about what I was reading. I was bone tired. I started the month off extremely strong, and then by the end of the month, I just kind of stopped reading altogether. My school year got extended because we got delayed a week of starting because we didn't have enough PPE in the beginning of the year, so we had to make up those 5 days at the end of the year, and then we also had 3 real snow days, which we also had to make up. So the kids had a bunch of days to make up. We had 2 professional days, so that way the kids didn't have to make up all of them, so we had to make them up anyways. And then I signed up for curriculum work. So my summer didn't really start until that last week of June. And that last week of June, that Thursday, which was actually July 1st, we left for Disney. So it was a mix of chaos of trying to get the end of the school year in, but also getting ready for our first plane ride with Sydney. It was a lot. So I'm going to stop rambling. Hopefully I can be a little bit more consistent. Today is July 10th, so the month is already almost halfway over and I haven't finished a single book yet. So we'll see what ends up happening. But let's just dive into the books that I read in the month of June. So let me grab my book, make sure I don't miss any. So I talked to you at the end of May about the 2 books that I was still in the middle of, and I think I ended up finishing, I know I finished one right at the end of May, and I think the other one I finished just at the beginning of June, so I'm just going to include them in here. So I was reading 2 Wedding Crashers by Megan Quinn. This is the second book in the Numbers trilogy, and I have to say that I really enjoyed the first book more. When I think I filmed my last video, I think I talked about how this was going to probably be a 4-star read for me, and then by the end, it ended up being a 3-star read. I really wasn't rooting for the couple by the end. This one, we are following one of the men that the character in the first book doesn't choose. And him and his love interest, they kind of meet on this kind of destination wedding that they are planning on crashing. And they're crashing for 2 very different reasons, but they meet and they kind of have an instant love connection. But what I really didn't like was the fact that at the end, their biggest problem was a communication problem, and I cannot stand when books have communication problems. Just talk to each other, you're adults. So, unfortunately, this ended up being 3 stars and not 4 stars like I thought. I'm still really excited to finish out this trilogy at some point and get the last book, but who knows when that'll happen because I don't own it. But, yeah, 3 stars. Then, we have Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Peninsula. This is the first book in a new series. It's kind of a cozy mystery series, and this one is following our main character. She just kind of has come home after a breakup. She's working at her family's restaurant, and her ex walks in, and I guess he's this really awful food critic, and he's been basically destroying all the restaurants in town. And today he's eating at her restaurant and basically probably going to try to destroy the name of their restaurant as well. Unfortunately, when he's there, he ends up dying while he's there, and all eyes kind of turn to their family, thinking that they possibly poisoned him, and she decides to try to figure out what happened and solve this mystery. This one was so much fun. I went into it with kind of low expectations just because I was looking forward to it. It was one of my most anticipated books of the year list, but it was also I was nervous about it because I'm not the biggest cozy mystery reader. And I ended up giving it 5 stars. I thought it was perfect. I really enjoyed it. I cannot wait to continue reading more, especially if it centers around food. I loved this one. Then I read I Need You Tonight by Antique and Hunter. I was clearly really trying to get a lot of my Kindle-y type books read, which this one and 2 Wedding Crashers were found on Kindle Unlimited, because that's kind of the format that I was finding to be the easiest, was to read my Kindle books. This is the second book in I don't remember the main series, but the first book is called A Pizza My Heart, and this is the sequel. And again, second book syndrome, I didn't love this one as much as I liked the first one. I thought the first one was much cuter than this one. This one, we're following the brother of the main character in the first one and the best friend of that main character from the first one. And again, I love the pizza element. I love the family dynamic. I love the small time vibes. I just didn't love this couple as much as I loved the couple from the first book. But again, a series that I will potentially continue on with. Then I read The Arrangement by Kristen Magdalene, and I also read this one through Kindle Unlimited. Okay. This one is a thriller novel, and I first heard about this one over on Instagram, and I bought it thinking, like, oh, I'm going to want to own this one. But I paid $15 for this, like, short little thing, and I'm going to continue reading this author, but probably through Amazon, through Kindle Unlimited, and not by purchasing. But this one was really unique. This one was following a couple, and they're kind of at the point where they are, like, kind of done with their marriage. They, like, don't know how to fix it, but they also kind of don't want to divorce because they don't want to hurt their children. So they kind of come up with this arrangement where, like, every week, like, I think he goes out with somebody new on Tuesdays, she goes out with somebody new on Thursdays, and they don't talk about who they're seeing or anything. They use a dating app to kind of meet somebody, basically have a fling, and then the next week they can see someone else. But obviously things go wrong because that just sounds like trouble, right? So unfortunately, there's some hijinks that ensue, and they have to figure out how to get out of this problem. The ending left me jaw-dropped. I gave this one 4 stars because it was a little slow getting to that point, but the ending just left me, like, in absolute disbelief. So, still worth it to read it. I think I will, like I said, continue just to read them on Amazon through Kindle Unlimited just because they are so short, but this will not be the last book I read by this author. Then, I don't have it. I read The Secret Keeper of Jaipur. This is the sequel to The Henna Artist, and I listened to this one through Libro FM's ALC program. If you are not a Libro FM subscriber, you should definitely do that if you like audiobooks. They basically take their proceeds and they help local bookstores, which is such a great thing. So I really love their service, and I love the format of their app, so it's very easy to use, and I love it. But I was listening to this one, and second book syndrome. I like The Henna Artist better. I didn't know where this one was going to go. This one kind of takes place after the first book, so I really don't want to spoil it. Like, it's not a direct, like, continuation, but it's a ton of years later following similar characters that we followed in the first one. I didn't read the synopsis ahead of time of going into this one, so again, I didn't really know what to expect. I wasn't really anticipating a sequel to begin with. When The Henna Artist definitely ends in a way that feels like it could definitely be a standalone, and I don't know how much more this added to the story. I still gave it 4 stars because it was still a solid story, but I just don't know how much it fits as a series. That's just my 2 cents. Then Kendra and I read Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, and I kind of couldn't stand this book. I gave it 3 stars, even though I probably wanted to give it much less than that. We are following this area where there's a marsh, and there's somebody basically called the Marsh Girl. I'm blanking on her actual name. Kaya. And she lives in this marsh, and basically, like, we are following kind of through her childhood into her adulthood, but we're also kind of alternating perspectives because we also know that timelines, because we know that there is a dead body that's found in the marsh, and they think that she has something to do with it. So we're kind of following her past leading up to that current moment, and then we're following, like, that current moment as they're trying to solve it. I just found this completely unsatisfying. It didn't connect with Kaya. I didn't connect with any of the guys that she was kind of interested in. Her family is awful. I also just didn't find her story 100%. I know it's fiction, so like to say it's not believable is weird. But she goes to school one day and never goes back. And then suddenly this guy comes and like teaches her to read over a span of 2 to 3 years. And suddenly, and like this guy is literally like a teenager. Like he was in high school, college age when like they met. So like not a certified teacher. And then suddenly she's reading and writing all of these like scientific things. And I'm like, you go to school one day and then you have a teenager teach you how to read and you could suddenly do, like, it just like little things like that. Like once I start not enjoying a book, I tend to nitpick it like crazy, and I was nitpicking this like crazy. And I just was hoping, because everybody loved this one so much, that the ending was going to bring something new to the table and something that I was going to really like be shocked with, and it wasn't that shocking to me. So unfortunately, I am an unpopular opinion with this book. Then I read Regretting You, which was weird because this wasn't anywhere near my TBR. This was nowhere near my brain. I don't know where this one came out from, but I suddenly had the urge to read this one. Again, I read this one through my Kindle app on Kindle Unlimited. And this one kind of has, I feel like, a bad reputation. Like I feel like a lot of people don't love this book compared to her other books. I haven't read her entire collection. I think I've only read, so I've read Verity, It Ends With Us, and this one? Oh, and Layla. So I haven't really read her extensive backlist yet. And I found this one to be really enjoyable. I gave it 4 stars. We're following a mother-daughter relationship. There is a part that mentions in the back, like, something that happens. And I feel like that something that happens doesn't happen for a while. So I like found myself kind of like waiting for it to happen. So I'm not going to say what that is, but something kind of puts this relationship really to the test. I don't know why there's still a bookmark in here. I definitely finished this book. And it put them to the test. And like I said, I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I don't understand why people don't love it as much. I could see maybe because it isn't as romantic heavy and they kind of wanted that side to it. I'm not sure, but I thought it was fun. I liked this look at mother-daughter relationships. I felt like it was a very realistic look at what a mother-daughter would go through in a situation like this. So I enjoyed it. Then I listened to, got all these bookmarks. I like to try to keep track of where I am in my reading when I'm listening to an audiobook that I own, but I tend to forget and I don't actually take the bookmarks out. But I listened to Fable by Adrienne Young. This is the first book in a duology. And I think this was a lot of fun. It's a YA novel. We're following Fable. And her father has basically abandoned her on this kind of not safe island. Her father is a really famous like tradesman. I almost want to compare them to pirates because it felt very piratey. And she basically has been trying to get off this island for at least 3 years, and her father basically promised her, you get off this island and find me, you will get your inheritance, pretty much. So her goal is to kind of go there and be reunited with her father and really kind of take her place by his side because she feels that she deserves to be on the water right there with him. I found it to be really good. I'm glad that I listened to it versus reading it. Not that I feel like I would have gotten a really drastically different experience, but I think that this one was a really good one to listen to on audio. I do plan to hopefully get Namesake also on audio, so that way I could listen to it as well. So this was fun. I gave it 4 stars if I didn't say that already. Then I read Present Perfect by Julie Olivia. This is the sequel in the Fox Hill series. I received this in exchange for an honest review. I reviewed her first book in the series, Match Cut, last June, so I was really excited that she was coming out with a new book in this series. She does a really nice job of writing these small town cute romances, but again, I didn't love this couple as much as I liked the other couple. This one kind of follows a kind of taboo-ish type of relationship as well. We are following the brother from the first book, and he is a professor, and he ends up having a relationship with this person who is essentially his student, but she also like works for the college as well. So she's kind of like, she's like a dean's intern. So she's not necessarily a student. She just decided to take a class while she's there. So like technically he shouldn't be with her, but it's also like not completely weird and out of the box. So it plays that line. I liked it. It was cute. I think that I liked the first couple and the first story a little bit better than I liked this one. But there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. I just liked the other one better. Then I listened to Red Sky Over Hawaii by Sarah Ackerman. I listened to this through my Hoopla app. I had really, really high hopes for this one, and I just found it to be kind of extremely disappointing. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I was really hoping that it was going to be similar to Flight Girls, because this does take place around Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, very similarly to the kind of culminating beginning event to Flight Girls. So I was hoping that this one would be similar, that we were supposed to be following a woman named Lana, who in the process, she was coming back to Hawaii to kind of reunite with her father, but by the time she gets here, her father has unfortunately passed on. And in the process of kind of like trying to grieve, Pearl Harbor happens, and basically they're trying to take in anybody who is of Japanese or Asian descent, or anybody that possibly is German. So while she's there, she ends up, her father's neighbors, the parents get taken away to a camp, and she ends up kind of essentially kidnapping the kids to save them. So she takes the kids and a man who was Japanese that was like her father's best friend, and she basically puts them all into hiding into her father's like kind of escape house. And it just was dull. Like, nothing really happened. There was a love story that tried to happen, but part of why I didn't like the love story was there was kind of a plot line that they talked about that our main character Lana was actually married, but then like because she couldn't have kids or something like that, like he didn't want to be with her. So technically they were probably on the way to a divorce, but she was still technically married, and she never really admitted that to the guy that she was with, and it just kind of, it rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know. This book just didn't do what I wanted it to do for me. So 3 stars. I'm probably being nice. Then I read For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing. And I had this one through Netgalley. This one comes out, I think, soon, actually. I think it comes out in about a week. And I gave this one 3 stars. I just found it extremely boring. It takes place in a school, and kind of like one of those like elite type of schools, and we're following a bunch of different characters. We're following some students, we're following some teachers, and unfortunately deaths start to occur, and they're really trying to figure out who is killing people. But unfortunately we know the murderer pretty much right off the bat. There was a little bit of, oh, maybe there was some confusion, but no, we knew the murderer right off the bat, and it just, because of that, it just dragged. Nothing was really happening. Even the ending, that was like kind of a little, they tried to have like a little bit of a twist there, but it just didn't do it for me. I really liked her last 2 books much better. So I'm still going to continue to read Samantha Downing. This one just didn't work with me. Then I listened to Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This is a classic novel, which I kind of didn't realize in terms of it came out in like the 60s or 70s. Like, it's not, like, I thought that this was like a recent-ish release, like came out within the last 10 years type of recent release. I didn't realize that it was a release that came out like years ago. I feel like really stupid because like Octavia Butler's like not even alive, so I don't know why I thought this was a recent release. This is a book about a woman, and she one day suddenly time travels basically to like the South during slavery time, and she'll come back. So she'll go to that time, she sees a white boy, and she saves him. And then things happen, and she like goes back to her current timeline. But she doesn't really know, but every time she kind of gets called back, she kind of gets called back to this time to almost save this white boy every single time. And she doesn't understand why. And every time she goes, she tends to stay for a little bit longer. She never knows what's going to be what pushes her back to the future. She doesn't know if she'll eventually just get stuck here. I don't know. Again, this is a very beloved book, and I think it did a lot for when it came out. This was the first kind of like science fiction-y, time travel-y book to come out by a Black woman. So I know that it is a very powerful and important book. I just didn't love the story as much. I was expecting something a little bit more, especially by the ending. I was like, I don't know how this is going to end. I feel like this is going to end in some like big crazy thing. And it was crazy, but just not in a way that like I rather enjoyed. So unfortunately, I think this one had good things to say, especially because we have this Black woman who is essentially trying to teach this white man about ways of life and ways to treat others. And so it definitely had some really great conversations. I just didn't love it. So 3 stars. Don't kill me. And then Dial A for Aunties by Jess Q. Santanato. This was Kendra's and my like group read that we host every month over on Instagram. And I had really high hopes for this one. I ended up giving this one 4 stars, but it definitely, the more and more I think about it, I'm like, maybe it was a 3 star. Maybe it was a 2 star. I really liked the fact that this was a really easy, light-hearted book to get through. We're following our main character. She has been living with her mom and her aunts. Basically, like, her family feels like they're cursed. Every man that they fall in love with will eventually leave them. And all the boys end up leaving. So, like, it's really big that she is, like, staying at home with her family and doing her family's business, which is running a bridal company where, like, one is, like, a florist and one bakes cakes and she's the photographer. And one night, her mom kind of, like, sets her up on a blind date. She goes on this blind date and she accidentally murders him. And so she doesn't know what to do, so she puts the body in the trunk and takes the body home and basically has her mom and her aunties help her figure out what to do with this body. Unfortunately, this body ends up in a cooler, which then goes to this wedding this fancy wedding on an island that her family are planning for like that next day. And it's a bunch of hijinks that ensue. There were a lot of kind of like twisty, weird moments, but I felt like this book was trying to do too much. I didn't fully love the love story. There's a love story that also happens in this one. There's a lot of twistiness that kind of happens at the end where it just felt like the author was trying to hit you over the head with twists when like it didn't necessarily need to be that way. It is technically the first book in a series. I have no idea why. I'm not saying that to be mean. I thought this ended in a way that just like I don't understand why it would continue unless we're going to continue to follow their wedding business. I just don't like when books do twists just for the sake of having twists and feeling like you need to have this shock factor. And even the twists just didn't feel genuine and they felt like kind of checklisty checks, and I don't know. We didn't end up really enjoying this one. Kendra, I think, went straight for a 2-star rating. I went for a 4, and the more I thought about it, I'm like, So, unfortunately, this one just didn't do it for us. Like I said, though, light, easy. I understand why people are loving it, and I understand why people are 4 or 5-starring it. It just didn't do it for us. Then I had 2 DNFs this month as well. Like I said, I had like such a weird month where like I started off like really, really strong, but there are some like definitely like weak points in this monthly wrap up where like I wasn't loving anything. Making Faces by Amy Harmon unfortunately ended up getting DNF'd. I felt terrible because Shelby bought this for me for I think my birthday or Christmas a couple years back, and I just think that Amy Harmon is just not for me. I tried to read her one that was kind of like on the prairie. Didn't like that one. This one is kind of supposed to be like a Beauty and the Beast retelling with 9/11 elements going on in it. The girl would not stop talking about how ugly she was, and it just drove me nuts. And then there was a page, I think it was like page 100 or something. What the male character goes off to war, and they're in Iraq, and they're starting to make like these like kind of like nasty comments about the women over there, and I had to DNF it immediately. So unfortunately, I didn't love this one. If you're looking for what I was talking about with the certain page that really, really bothered me and really pushed me over the edge, it is in my Instagram review. So if you want to check that out, my Instagram is always linked down below. So unfortunately, this one it didn't do it for me. And then I also DNF'd Cersei by Madeline Miller. I got to page 77 and I just felt like nothing was happening. I don't understand the love for this one. I was extremely bored. I put it down being like, okay, like once my life calms down, once the school year's over, maybe I will pick it back up. I have zero interest in repicking this one up, so I think it's time to just say that it's getting DNF'd. So unfortunately, this one also did not get finished this month. So yeah, that is all I read in June. It was a very, very weird month. So let me know what you've read in June. Did you find any new favorites? Hopefully I have better luck in July once I actually start reading again. Let me know, and I will see you guys really, really soon. Bye, everybody.